Remarkable how the absence of certainty can linger after a breakup, isn't it? Welcome to Avoidant Ex. Here's what he's thinking. A revealing look into the mind of that elusive partner who seemed to slip away just when things felt most vulnerable. In the next several minutes, consider settling into a comfortable spot as we wander through the labyrinth of the avoidant psyche, exploring both the head and heart of someone who, once upon a time, seemed entirely untouchable. Let me offer a small recollection to set the stage. I once knew a fellow, let's call him Lawrence, who sailed in and out of relationships like a traveler, skimming the globe with scarcely a moment's pause for reflection. His answers to any partner's pleas for deeper connection often sounded marvelously logical. He'd mutter something about being independent or not wanting to be burdened by emotional demands. Over time, I realized it was simpler than that. He simply didn't know how to feel genuinely safe in another's presence. It wasn't that he refused to care. It was that his system had been wired to brace itself against intimacy from a very young age. So, if you're left wondering about your own avoidant ex, what his thoughts were, whether he ever truly loved you, and if he's perhaps regretting the break, this reflection is for you. Let us begin with what's happening inside the head of someone with avoidant tendencies, especially in the aftermath of a relationship. Have you ever noticed how some people seem perpetually on the lookout for threats? An avoidant ex might appear cool and unruffled, but internally, stress is often simmering. The primary chemical behind this is cortisol, the body's alarm signal that keeps them watchful. From childhood experiences where comfort was sparse or inconsistent, their brain learned to hold cortisol at the ready, scanning every interaction for potential harm. This stress rarely recedes in a meaningful way, because the other calming, bonding chemicals simply don't get much airtime. There's also the matter of dopamine, that short burst of excitement or pleasure people experience when something thrilling or novel happens. The avoidant man's system relies on little bursts of dopamine to feel momentary relief from stress. An exciting new hobby, a short-lived flirtation, or a surge of adrenaline can bring some small sense of reward before real closeness threatens to intrude. Next come the chemicals that could have balanced all that stress, if only they were given free rein. Oxytocin, commonly called the love hormone. It fosters feelings of warmth, trust, and well-being, released in moments of comforting touch or deep emotional connection. GABA. This neurotransmitter is a gentle brake on anxiety, helping the mind calm itself, especially after receiving loving reassurance. Vasopressin, a bonding chemical that arises when you overcome challenges side by side with someone. Shared tasks, personal confessions, or solving problems together often spark this. Serotonin, a sense of contentment that comes from stable, longer-term connections and balanced, harmonious relationships. In a healthy romantic bond, a person can soothe moments of stress with these four friends. But with an avoidant, cortisol stands like a guard dog, preventing these other chemicals from truly taking hold. He might experience occasional flickers of relief, but that continuous sense of tension seldom disappears. Early in a courtship, an avoidant man can feel just as exhilarated as anyone else. You may recall how affectionate and engaged he seemed in the first few months. What was that about? A new romance triggers dopamine surges, dates filled with discovery, fresh experiences, novelty. But watch for the 7-month mark. Give or take, the exciting first flush wears thin, the dopamine gradually dips, and he might not transition into the deeper, more secure realm of steady oxytocin bonding. It's often here that he starts feeling a creeping pressure. Emotional needs, talk of exclusivity, possibly a desire to move toward living together or forming serious commitments. He sees risk and heightened expectations. If he's already bracing for heartbreak, The notion of more strings attached can drive him inward. This retreat looks from the outside like emotional unavailability, and in truth, that's precisely what it is. Some ask, how can it possibly be risky to share a conversation or talk about deeper feelings? For most of us, closeness brings relief. We enjoy leaning on loved ones, revealing vulnerabilities and feeling safe. The avoidant man, however, may have learned from early life that revealing too much leads to rejection, punishment, or misunderstanding. In his mind, sharing emotions is a gamble without a prize. He may have grown up in an environment where personal needs were rarely acknowledged, so his brain decided that full independence is the only route to security. Imagine being locked in a fortress of your own making. The walls are thick, with an internal chorus chanting, "Keep them at arm's length." If, on occasion, an outside visitor manages to slip in, the alarms start blaring. That's how an avoidant ex typically lives, anxious to keep control, seeking the fleeting relief of dopamine, yet never truly allowing the deeper bonds that could set him free from this exhausting vigilance. Now the relationship has ended. You're left with questions swirling. Is he lying in bed thinking of you? Is he relieved? Or is he quietly riddled with remorse? First, consider what remorse means to someone who seldom experiences the warm reassurance of genuine intimacy. His thoughts may run along the lines of, why did her feelings become so intense? Why all these demands for closeness? I was giving what I could, so why wasn't that enough? He might also be studying his actions with a rational lens, asking if he missed something obvious that could have made it work. Yet there's a very real chance that his logical side is concluding the odds of success were poor from the start. He measured the risk and discovered that continuing the relationship felt too unpredictable, a possible trap for ongoing stress. He may also wonder, could there be another way? Could I have approached it differently? Some avoidant men, often those with a moral core about fair treatment, sometimes called ethical avoidance, do question how they contributed to the breakup. In the aftermath, they might quietly seek out self-help resources or discuss the experience with a trusted friend. Others, who live in a more cynical headspace, swiftly blame the partner for being demanding. They move on, possibly returning later if they suspect the relationship can be rekindled with minimal emotional cost. That latter group knows how to give fleeting excitement, but rarely invests in genuine closeness. A popular question: can an avoidant ex come back? And if so, how do you navigate that rocky ground? If your former partner is open to honest exploration, if he's more ethical avoidant than manipulative, then there's a path. It involves exchanging logic-based insights rather than purely emotional pleas. Think about calmly explaining, I realize we struggled with communication. I've been working on understanding attachment styles, and I see how anxious I felt when I thought I'd lose you. Could we talk about the differences in how each of us connects? This approach has a better chance of engaging his mind because it frames the conversation as a puzzle to solve rather than an emotional outburst. He might be intrigued by the prospect of learning about his own avoidant tendencies, especially if presented in a rational, structured manner. The conversation can then move toward how you can both collaborate, using curiosity, not blame, to see whether you can bridge the gap. If, however, the ex is entrenched in blaming or fleeting attention, the scenario changes. You might receive cryptic messages after many months, hints of, let's meet up, or I miss the fun we had. We might call this an attempt at a temporary fix, seeking that dopamine jolt, with little interest in genuine transformation. Proceed carefully, for your own well-being. Re-entering a relationship cycle without concrete changes in how the two of you handle emotional closeness can lead back to heartbreak. Far too often, those who have repeated encounters with avoidant partners carry their own anxious patterns. Perhaps your self-esteem wavers, or you crave external validation from someone who, ironically, may be the least prepared to give it. You try to win them over, to prove you're worthy of love, while he edges away in confusion or self-protection. The cycle persists, leaving you both in emotional limbo. Reflect on whether you connect your sense of worth to saving or fixing this relationship. If that resonates, it's worth exploring your own anxious attachments, learning how to maintain boundaries, how to self-soothe rather than chase your partner, and how to recognize that genuine warmth should be a two-way street. Self-awareness can liberate you from repeating patterns of heartbreak. If, once you've done that internal work, you return to the table with new skills, an avoidant ex might see a different side of you, one that speaks more calmly, logically, and with gentle confidence. And that could shift the dynamic. In short, the avoidant ex is frequently consumed with survival logic more than genuine malice or indifference. He has built certain walls that were once a child's shield. He wonders if there was an easier path, or if you asked too much. He might be uncertain whether your emotional depth had real value, or if it was an elaborate snare. The tragedy is that by retreating from closeness, he robs himself of the genuine attachments that would soothe his restless mind. If you wish to reconnect, cool-headed negotiation may be more effective than ardent declarations of love. By demonstrating that you understand what's happening behind his reserve, and by learning to moderate your own emotional impulses, you may just open a door that was firmly locked before. That said, examine why you want him back. Are you operating from a place of calm love or from fear of abandonment? Understanding your motivation is paramount, because forging any lasting bond depends on two people who are both prepared to bridge the distance and meet in the middle. Would you like to share what's on your mind about all of this? Perhaps you've encountered a familiar story here, of an avoidant ex you still think about, of attempts at bridging that gap, of the confusion that follows in the aftermath. Comments and conversations can be a boon, helping us feel less adrift. Feel free to share your journey. I would love to hear from you.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.